Hey everyone. Never thought I'd be the type to post something like this, but here I am, reaching out to strangers on the internet because I don't know who else to talk to. My wife, Hannah, and I were together for 10 years, married for 8. We met in college, and we were each other's first everything. I always thought what we had was rare and real, something built on history and love. Turns out, I might have been the only one who saw it that way. Not long ago, Hannah started a new job. At first, she had a hard time fitting in. She's naturally quiet and kind of introverted. But with some encouragement from me, she eventually connected with a group of women at work. A few of them were either divorced or just dating around without settling down. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. She finally had friends she could go out with. But then came the late-night drinks, the parties, and all these events they organized. I wanted to talk to her about how much she was going out, but I didn't want to come off as controlling. Things between us started to change, especially in the bedroom. Hannah, who rarely initiated anything to begin with, suddenly seemed distant, tired, or just plain uninterested most of the time. She was constantly going out, and when she did come home, she wasn't really present. Eventually, a new manager came on board at her company. His name was Mark. From what I could tell, she and her group of friends welcomed him with open arms. She started bringing him up in random conversations, even when the topic had nothing to do with work. She'd talk about things he did or said that had nothing to do with their job. I started to get a weird feeling about it, so I mentioned my concerns to her. She dismissed them like it was nothing. Then, out of nowhere, she brought up the idea of having an open marriage. Said it might spice things up. I was floored. This was the same woman who had never been particularly adventurous or open about that kind of thing. I asked her straight up if it had anything to do with her new manager. She denied it. Said she just felt like she missed out on certain experiences and didn't want to lose me, which is why an open arrangement felt safer. I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. I agreed, stupidly, and we set some basic ground rules. The biggest one? No hooking up with other people in our home. That was supposed to be our safe space. Over the next year, she went out on dates, had a few one-night stands, and eventually started something more serious with Mark. Meanwhile, I went on a handful of dates but never crossed any major lines. Over time, I felt something in me begin to die. That innocent, unconditional love I once had for Hannah, it faded. And I hated that. Then I met someone. Her name's Mina. She's from South Korea and had just moved here. Being around her was effortless. We went on unforgettable dates, had deep, open conversations, and the chemistry was off the charts. For the first time in ages, I felt alive again. At first, Hannah acted like it was funny. But then her tone shifted. She started getting suspicious, asking questions, doubting the connection I had with Mina. I reminded her this whole setup was her idea. And then I asked her, point blank, about her relationship with Mark. She didn't say a word. After that, her behavior changed. Drastically. She started coming home earlier, cooked dinner, cleaned everything spotless. She even stopped by my office to bring me lunch. In the bedroom, she actually started initiating again. Any other time, those things might have warmed my heart. But now, I couldn't return that same energy. Not genuinely. When we were intimate, it felt robotic, just going through the motions. I think she felt that too. Eventually, I asked her what had changed. Why all the sudden effort? She said she was just trying to show me she still loved me and wanted to make things work between us. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony of it all was just too much. I brought up her friend group, the nights out, Mark, the one-night stands. She didn't respond. Just cried herself to sleep. The next morning, she told me she wanted to end the open marriage. Said it was a terrible mistake. That she regretted everything. She begged for us to focus on our relationship again. I asked her to be completely honest. Tell me what really led to all of this. And she finally opened up. Turns out, her friends were the ones who first planted the idea. They told her stories about their adventures, and it sparked her curiosity. Then Mark came along, and he didn't just support that lifestyle, he pushed it. What started as a little flirtation eventually became full-on emotional and physical cheating. She told me it felt like driving a car at full speed while drunk, thrilling at first, but terrifying once reality set in. At first, the novelty was exciting. But over time, the weight of her choices crushed her. She said she finally realized that nothing out there compared to what we had. That our bond, our history, was real and irreplaceable. And now, she was drowning in regret, fully aware of how deeply she'd hurt me, and how much of our future she might have destroyed. That's when I admitted that. I told her, as gently as I could, that I wasn't sure I could ever see her the same way again, not as my wife. And that crushed her. She dropped to her knees in silence, and I held her as she sobbed, both of us wrapped in a wordless grief. Eventually, the emotional weight wore her down, and she fell asleep in my arms right there on the couch. In an effort to make things right, Hannah made a bold move. She quit her job and cut all contact with her manager and the group of friends who'd led her down this path. She said she wanted to dedicate her life to making amends, to becoming the kind of wife I could trust again. But here's the complicated truth: I still haven't ended things with Mina. And honestly, Mina makes me feel like a man again. Strong. Confident. Wanted. Feelings I hadn't felt in years, certainly not in my marriage. Now, to make things even messier, we've got our first marriage counseling session scheduled in just a couple of hours. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm trying to stay hopeful. The therapist came across as kind and experienced during our intake call. That gave me a bit of reassurance. Even though it was our first session, Hannah didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. She opened up right away, admitting that her friends had planted the idea in her head that maybe she was missing out on life by staying in a monogamous marriage. None of those friends were married, though a few were divorced. The therapist pointed out something that hit home: when you start chasing what you think you've missed, instead of valuing what you have, it can destroy the foundation of a marriage. That kind of mindset is toxic. It breeds resentment and restlessness. Hannah agreed. She said that once her manager started giving her attention, some of her friends encouraged her to explore it, to see what else was out there. At first, she said she felt guilty about even considering it. But then one of her divorced friends suggested an open marriage, told her it was a harmless loophole. According to her, some couples actually came out stronger on the other side of it. So Hannah convinced me to go along with the idea. And now she regrets that decision more than anything. She said what felt thrilling at first, new, exciting, wild, ended up feeling hollow. Meaningless. She started questioning why she even went down that road in the first place. Seeing the pain in my face, she said, hit her harder than she expected. At first, she figured I'd adjust, especially since I was dating too. But everything shifted when Mina became a real part of my life. I started to smile again. I laughed more. When Mina messaged or called, my whole mood changed. Hannah noticed. And it crushed her. She admitted she started having anxiety and panic attacks, random ones, triggered by nothing in particular. She asked her friends what to do, but most of them brushed it off like it was just part of the experience. One friend, though, gave it to her straight, said it seemed like Mina made me genuinely happy. That's when reality slapped her in the face. It wasn't her lighting me up anymore. It was someone else. Desperate, she turned back to the same friends who'd pushed her into this mess in the first place, asking how to fix it, how to win me back. And you know what they told her? If you couldn't handle the fallout, you shouldn't have started the fire. It was then she realized just how destructive and toxic those friendships really were, and how much they'd contributed to unraveling everything we'd built together. So she cut ties. All of them. She started putting in real effort, trying to show me she still loved me and wanted to rebuild what we had. She said she'd do whatever it took. As for me, I didn't say much during that first therapy session. But I did admit one thing, that I was still seeing Mina. The therapist didn't judge me, but they made it clear, if Mina stayed in the picture, there'd be no way forward for Hannah and me. They recommended we come back for another session in 2 days, just to keep unpacking everything. They seemed to understand the unique dynamic we shared, being each other's firsts, growing up together through college and adulthood. And I could tell they believed, at least a little, that this marriage could still be saved. Maybe they're right. Maybe, with enough time and honesty, there's a chance for healing. That's why I'm here, laying it all out. I want to be honest about where we stand. About everything we've gone through. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I'm trying to figure it out. I ended up moving into my brother Ryan's apartment. He offered to let me stay rent-free, but I insisted on paying him something, even if it was just a little, to keep some sense of independence. I didn't want to feel like I was completely relying on anyone, not now. Meanwhile, I kept digging into the truth behind Hannah's behavior and her connection with her manager. And what I found, it broke me even more. During our second counseling session, I finally asked the question that had been gnawing at me. Had anything physical happened between her and Mark before we agreed to open the marriage? She turned her face away, eyes locked on the floor, and whispered for me not to make her say it. I sat in silence, waiting. Then, reluctantly, she confessed. It wasn't traditional, she said. Not real, physical intimacy, according to him. But they had pleasured each other. In person. Together. He told her it didn't count as cheating, not really, that it was just them admiring each other's bodies. Nothing more than two adults appreciating beauty. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like my lungs had collapsed. Like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my chest. Hannah began to tremble, barely able to breathe between her sobs. Tears streamed down her face as she apologized over and over again. Even our therapist, who had been calm and composed until then, looked stunned by the confession. Hannah dropped to her knees right there in the office, wrapped her arms around my legs, and clung to me like I was the only solid thing left in her world. Her guilt was palpable. Still trying to understand, I asked her what finally made her back away from him. What had changed? She told me there was a night she skipped one of their usual group outings. After a late meeting, as she was leaving the office, she overheard Mark talking to another male colleague. And what she heard destroyed her. He laughed and said how surprised he was at how easy it was to manipulate her. Said even the quiet ones can't be trusted, not when they get a taste of something new. Then the other guy asked if Mark had real feelings for her. His response? She's sweet, but she's just a distraction. Nothing serious. He said he had no intention of ending things with his fiancée, that Hannah was just something to pass the time. That what he had with his bride was real. He even had the audacity to say he felt bad for me, but then shrugged it off like I was collateral damage. That conversation shattered every illusion Hannah had about him. She left work in a daze, sick with guilt. When she got to the parking lot, she broke down completely, physically throwing up from the emotional shock. When she told me this, her eyes were red and swollen. She said that ever since that day, she had been drowning in regret. That she hated herself for betraying me over something so shallow. So meaningless. I asked her, despite everything, if she'd ever actually loved him. If her feelings for me had faded during all of this. She looked me straight in the eyes, her own filled with tears, and said no. She never stopped loving me. And for some reason, hearing that only made it worse. Knowing she still loved me, yet had done all of this anyway, it added a new layer to the pain. A deeper wound. She gripped my hand tight then, desperately, like it was her last lifeline. She told me how sorry she was. How much she missed what we had before all of this. Before the open marriage. Before Mark. Before everything started falling apart. She said she wanted to start over? Move somewhere new. Build the life we once talked about, together. But I couldn't give her an answer. Not yet. I told her it wouldn't be fair to keep seeing Mina while trying to fix what we had. That I needed time to untangle this mess, to figure out if there was still something between us worth saving. When she heard that, something inside her broke. She collapsed into me, crying uncontrollably, clinging to me like I might disappear if she let go. It took both the therapist and me a long time to calm her down, to bring the conversation back to a place where we could breathe again. I started packing up more of my things, thinking that creating some distance might give me the clarity I desperately needed. But as I was zipping up my duffel, Hannah's laptop pinged with an incoming video call. It was one of her old friends from work, the same crowd she used to go out with. The woman was crying, visibly shaken. I paused and watched as Hannah answered the call, unsure of what to expect. What we heard was shocking. After Hannah left the company, this friend, let's call her Rachel, had started an affair with Mark, the manager. And now? She was pregnant. What's worse is that this revelation came with a dramatic shift in Mark's behavior. He became cold and distant, the same manipulative side he'd once hidden now fully on display. Rachel admitted she already had a boyfriend at the time, someone she saw a future with. But just like Hannah, she'd been lured in by curiosity. That urge to chase something new. It was the same toxic thread that ran through so much of this story. She told us her boyfriend had stumbled upon emails between her and Mark, ones that hinted at the pregnancy. Devastated, he ended things. And instead of owning up to what he'd done, Mark accused her of trying to trap him with a baby. With nowhere else to turn, Rachel reached out to Hannah, thinking that since Hannah and I were still technically married, maybe she had figured out how to fix things. Maybe she could offer advice. But I couldn't sit through any more of it. I left. I needed to breathe. I returned to Ryan's apartment, the quiet space that had become my refuge in the chaos. Not long after, more news broke. Rachel, it turned out, really was pregnant. And the emotional fallout of losing her relationship and facing public shame pushed her over the edge. In a moment of desperation and anger, she exposed everything to upper management and to Mark's fiancée. Out of sheer curiosity, I found Mark's fiancée on Facebook. Her profile looked like it had been ripped straight out of a small-town dream. She was a teacher who worked with special needs children, talked about the importance of family, community, and love. Everything about her screamed wholesome. The contrast between her online presence and Mark's behavior made my skin crawl. Then, unexpectedly, Rachel reached out to me directly. She wanted to meet, said she was gathering evidence to help with the investigation and wanted to hear my side of things. I agreed, but only after we both got COVID tested. I wasn't taking any chances. When we met, it was clear she was wrecked. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin, hands trembling, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Still, she thanked me for agreeing to see her. She apologized sincerely for her role in encouraging Hannah to go down the path she did. She told me she'd been trying to reconnect with Hannah after learning I had moved out. She said the loss of her baby, and the man she loved, had changed her deeply. She was filled with shame and self-disgust. She couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of her boyfriend walking away. Meeting me, she said, was partly about owning up to the damage she'd helped cause. Maybe even punishing herself a little. She admitted that what she and Mark did, engaging with subordinates while in a position of power, was a clear violation of company policy. And given how high-profile the scandal had become, there was a good chance Mark would be fired, maybe even blacklisted from the industry. After hearing my side, she thanked me again and left, still burdened with guilt, but determined to face the consequences. Later, I returned to the house to grab a few more of my things. I'd planned it so Hannah wouldn't be home. But when I walked in, there she was. She was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by our wedding photos. Just staring. When she saw me, tears filled her eyes. She stood and tried to hug me, but I gently stepped back. I was here to get my stuff, not revisit memories. But she stopped me and said there was something I needed to see. She showed me a message on her phone. It was from Mark. Sent from a different number, since she'd blocked his old one. It was angry, aggressive, filled with insults. Apparently, he found out she had helped Rachel expose him to HR and his fiancée. He was furious. She explained that she'd done it not just to protect Rachel, but because she believed taking him down might give us a chance to start over. That if he was out of the picture, maybe some of the damage could start to heal. I thanked her for the courage it must have taken to do that. But I also told her it didn't change anything between us. My decision had already been made. I let her know I wouldn't be continuing the marriage counseling sessions. She nodded, quietly crying. No arguments. No begging. You'd think I'd feel something at that moment: anger, relief, vindication. But all I felt was numb. Just this dull, aching emptiness. That reaction scared me. It didn't feel normal. So, after talking it through with Ryan, I decided to start individual therapy. Not for the marriage. For myself. I needed to rebuild from the inside out. I consulted with a divorce attorney. At this point, I wasn't trying to save the marriage anymore. That fight was over. And I think Hannah sensed that shift in me. Right before I left the house, she tried to initiate something physical. When I turned her down, she snapped. Her voice rose, echoing through the walls for the neighbors to hear. She demanded to know what Mina had that she didn't. Then she shouted that she was willing to meet any need I had, any desire, any fantasy, if that's what it took to keep me. I just shook my head, slowly, sadly. Even now, after everything, she still didn't get it. She still didn't understand that this wasn't about lust or physical needs. It was about betrayal. About choices. About the deep fracture she'd created in our marriage. I told her, calmly but firmly, that if she still couldn't see the full weight of what she'd done, then there was nothing left for us to salvage. I walked out with a heavy heart, feeling the finality of it settle in. It was clear she was finally beginning to understand the consequences. But understanding doesn't undo damage. And the unfortunate truth? There's no rewinding time. No fixing what's already broken beyond repair. Maybe one day she'll grow from this. Maybe she'll reflect, learn, and become a better partner for someone else. But it won't be with me. That chapter of our lives is over. I know she'll carry the memory of me, of us, for a long time. That regret will linger, deeper than most of us ever feel when trust is shattered. Putting these feelings into words has helped me stay grounded. It's helped me hold on to some clarity through the wreckage. Infidelity isn't just a wound, it's a trauma. It leaves behind scars that don't fade quickly, if ever. But I do believe I'll come out stronger. Wiser. More whole than I felt in a long time. There was one last moment of bitterness that caught me off guard, a final sting. I was on a call with my sister-in-law, Amy. I brought up the day at the hospice, when Elaine, my ex, had invited Trevor to join us. I asked if she had really extended that invitation. Amy admitted she had. Said she tried to talk Elaine out of it but didn't know why Elaine insisted. I mentioned I thought Susie might be there too, and Amy explained Elaine didn't want a 3-year-old hearing what would likely be a tense conversation. So I dropped Susie off at her grandparents' place before Amy and I made our way to the hospice. When we arrived, the nurse greeted us warmly. Cindy said Elaine was having a good day and had used the morphine pump less often. Then we stepped into the room. It was quiet, peaceful, a large window overlooking a garden. But all that calm vanished when I saw Trevor sitting at the head of the bed. I kept my composure. I greeted Elaine with a handshake, not a kiss, and sat on the opposite side of the bed, next to Amy. Elaine thanked us for coming, said she knew it was awkward, but insisted we were all there for one reason: Susie. I kept my eyes on Trevor and asked why he was even there. Elaine hesitated. Instead of answering, she started by thanking Amy for being her rock, through everything. She opened up about her fertility struggles, how hard the IVF process had been, and how Amy supported her through all of it. She called Amy her hero, Susie's protector. Then Elaine turned to me, acknowledging the pain she'd caused by cheating on me with Trevor. I couldn't help myself. I asked, bitter and tired, why? Why Trevor? She said it was desperation. That despite Amy's reassurances, she never believed my fertility was the issue. And one day, Trevor, who worked in the office next door, saw her crying during lunch. He offered comfort. Held her hand. Over time, that turned into friendship. I scoffed. Rolled my eyes. And I said, I understood, in some small part, that Elaine might have been desperate, willing to try anything to become a mother. But when she added that Trevor had offered to help, I shot him a disgusted look. I told her he should have kept his distance. Elaine then tried to explain her actions. At first, she said, it was about improving her chances of getting pregnant. But over time, she and Trevor had fallen in love. She described it like it was some sweeping romance, a life-changing connection. Then she said something that truly stunned me. She hoped she could keep both of us in her life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her how she could possibly think I'd agree to something like that. She admitted she'd been terrified I would leave her once I found out about the affair. But when I didn't, when I stayed and supported her through IVF, through everything, she saw me as her hero. She said that by staying, by putting Susie first, I proved I still loved her. Then she asked for one last favor. She wanted me to allow Trevor to be part of Susie's life. She wanted me to give him joint custody after she passed. I turned and looked at Trevor. He seemed different now, not smug, but tense, uncertain. I was so blindsided by the request that I turned to Amy for confirmation, and she looked just as stunned. I shook my head and said flatly, "No. That's not going to happen." Elaine's eyes widened. Tears welled up. But then she took a deep breath, as if bracing for something big, and said, "You have to. Because Susie's not your biological daughter." The room went dead silent. I stared at her, stunned, waiting for her to take it back. But she didn't. She explained that she'd wanted a child with both of us, one with me, and one with Trevor. And when she started IVF, she had convinced Amy to use Trevor's genetic material instead of mine. The plan had been to use my sample later, for a second IVF attempt. But her cancer diagnosis cut those plans short. I turned to Amy, eyebrows raised in disbelief. Amy looked at me, calm but firm, and said, "That's not true." She explained that yes, Elaine had asked her to switch the samples, but she refused. She'd discarded Trevor's material and used mine, just as originally planned. Amy was confident a DNA test would confirm it. Trevor had started to smile, but Amy shut him down immediately. "A DNA test won't help you," she said. "You're not the father." Elaine snapped at Amy, furious. "Why would you do that?" Amy didn't back down. She told her flat out, what Elaine had asked was wrong, selfish, and morally disgusting. Amy also revealed that Elaine's claim about being a genetic dead end was false. That there had never been a medical reason to involve Trevor at all. Elaine collapsed into herself, asking for forgiveness. Then Amy dropped one more truth: the eggs used in the IVF were hers. She was Susie's biological mother. And once Elaine passed, we planned to marry. Amy would legally adopt Susie, her own daughter. I turned to Elaine and told her, without hesitation, that I had no intention of sharing Susie with Trevor. That dream she had of a blended family was never going to happen. I also confronted her about everything, how she'd hidden the affair, gone through IVF under false pretenses, and asked Amy to do something so twisted. I told her Amy had come to me with the request, that we had considered throwing her out of the house right then and there. We'd even toyed with the idea of revenge. But we didn't act on it. Instead, we chose something better. Stronger. There was a brief moment, long ago, where we considered using Elaine as a surrogate. But then came the betrayal. The cancer. The broken trust. None of that was ever going to happen now. Elaine asked about her remaining eggs. Amy told her they were stored at the clinic, anonymously. They might be used in the future to help a patient in need, but Trevor would have no connection to any child born from them. Despite everything, Amy and I expressed that we still cared about Elaine. That we loved her, in a way. And that we wanted her to spend her remaining time making peace with what had happened. For Susie's sake. We told her Susie was going to face a painful road ahead. Losing her mother would be hard, confusing, heartbreaking. But what mattered most now was how Elaine chose to be remembered. We gave her a choice. She could let Susie grow up knowing the truth, that her mom had betrayed her family and tried to rewrite history. Or she could be remembered as the brave, selfless woman who helped her sister and brother-in-law bring a beautiful girl into the world. We asked her, one last time, "Do you want to be Susie's hero,